What's up, Robbie? How's it going?
Living the dream. How about you?
I'm hanging in there. I got my second cup of coffee going here, so I'm pretty happy about that. We got all hands today, so I was up late working on slides, but so I've got my coffees for closers mug here, my MSP coffees for closers. Hey folks, as you kind of get settled here, we're gonna wait for folks to kind of like trickle in here in a sec, before we get fully jamming here. But Robbie, got any big plans this weekend? Got any big hikes planned in Denver there, or
No,
or anything else?
I actually had COVID last week, and
Oh,
so
fun!
I was
Join the
trapped in my
club.
right. I mean, I all the cool kids got it last week, right? So I was trapped in my basement for 8 days. I did
Oh,
get really,
bro.
really yeah. My wife, I came home and I unfortunately tested negative the first day on Saturday, and I came tested positive on Sunday. She's like straight to the basement, and so she would not let
Into
me
the
out
basement.
because into the basement, but.
Into the basement.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lie, it was a pretty quiet week at work, and I got like a little mini vacation. And so I
Yeah.
played a lot of Mario. I got up Mario 2, watched a lot of Netflix. Food kept
There you
just
go.
showing up on my doorstep. It was great.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's why you were going around like licking doorknobs and what have you. I get
Oh,
it.
absolutely,
Excellent.
absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Welcome to Modern Sales Power Hour. I'm Pete Kazanjy. As you folks know, this is a very interactive show, very interactive conversation. And so what we would love for folks to do is to use the Q&A panel, to use the chat as much as possible, because we've got Robbie here. He's been around the block a couple times to kind of answer questions. Myself, I have some opinions as well. And for those who are not necessarily familiar, so Power Hour is hosted by Modern Sales Pros. MSP is the world's largest revenue leadership community for those in sales management, sales and revenue operations, sales development, sales enablement, related disciplines. And so community's mission is pretty straightforward. It's to create an environment for our 30,000 and growing members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own, help them see around corners that they may not know about, just in general, like upgrade themselves, right? Be better at what they do. And so the way that we do that is through great live sessions like this, with wonderful guests who are willing to share their thoughts, through our robust online forum, which is really great for asynchronous questions and answers, and in-person events as well. More and more of those in-person events that are happening. So for folks who weren't previously admitted to MSP, you'll get access to the community after the show. And so before we get started, just a couple like reminders. Power Hour is a pretty unique format. There's not really a specific piece of content that we're talking through. Instead, we're just kind of picking the brain of whatever illustrious guests that we have in store for you. And but the whole idea is that we're here to learn. This is like live Q&A, so please do ask your questions in the chat. Please do please do use the Q&A panel. We've had a number of requests or kind of questions that were dropped ahead of time, which is fantastic as well. And so the whole idea here is for everyone to just kind of like to learn. And so with that, we'll do some introductions here. I'll make mine super quick. I'm Pete. I'm the founder of Modern Sales Pros, also the founder of Atrium. Atrium makes data-driven sales management software that exists purely for the purpose of helping sales managers, so AE managers, SDR managers, AM, CSM managers, improve rep and team performance with data, with metrics. And so that's what we do. Prior to Atrium, I ran sales at a software organization called Talentbin. I was also the founder, and which was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. And I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales as well. So I think about sales a little bit, turns out. Robbie, can you introduce yourself to our illustrious audience here?
Yeah. So my name's Robby. I am the head of revenue enablement here at Sparrow. I've been here a whole week, so I just switched jobs and just getting right on into it. Previously, I have built up enablement programs at about 5 different programs at some larger SMB companies, some mid-market, and then I've also had experience working at the enterprise with Oracle and Salesforce. Really enjoyed it. But Pete, I got to point out something really quick. I think is really cool. I started my career as a classroom teacher, and actually one of my former students from like 20 years ago, he was in 3rd grade. He's on the call today, so I'm pretty excited about that.
I did not know that you started out as a teacher, and I am 0% surprised by that. And
Yep.
that is absolutely fantastic. And I think as managers, we can learn a lot from teaching, right? Because
Yes.
that's like doing is low leverage. Teaching people how to do things is high leverage. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit here. My mom's a teacher. She was a kindergarten teacher, and then a first
bless
grade
her
teacher.
soul.
And then she was a professor of education. So that is 0% surprising to me, Robbie, that is the case. Wonderful. Well, I think we can get jamming here. So I think actually kind of on the topic of teaching and kind of like management, I think you and I were kind of talking ahead of the conversation about like first level managers and how to best enable them and what have you. And I think kind of like one of the big questions there is like, what is the best way to enable junior first level managers? Because especially like many of us who are on the call today work at early stage companies or high growth companies where there's a lot of like battlefield promoted folks going on, like who are high performing AEs or high performing SDRs or what have you. So like, I mean, what are some thoughts that you have around like how best to enable those first level managers, those junior first level managers?
Yeah, so the first thing is that we have to accept the fact that they're not super reps. Like I think that's the first thing that we really make a mistake with a lot of high growth companies, which you and I have both been in for quite a while now. Is we put these people in these roles like, oh, by the way, can you just go finish closing all these deals over here and then go manage all these 7 people? Well, here's the problem with that. Like, which one's going to get them paid more? Well, the deals are going to get them paid more, so they're going to go there. So that's the first thing is we as second line or CROs or VPs of sales, you have to make a distinction of, is this person you're promoting going to be a leader or are they going to be on the field? Like that's number one. And then number 2 is you can't just fling things over to the fence to the managers. I think Eli Cohen wrote, when he wrote his first book, Sales Hub, one of the things that really stuck in my mind was you have to try to make each one of your first line managers like a mayor. Treat them like a mayor of their own town.
A mayor.
And the mayor, like they're the one who knows everybody. They know of the town, of their little fiefdom that they have in the sales organization. And we got to be able to make them look good. Like you don't ever want your mayor to get up on stage and not know what they're saying, right? So from an enablement perspective, one of the things I started doing when I was at Heap was I started building out these. We do monthly learning paths, and so I am a strong believer of no random acts of enablement. So we don't just do, hey, let's throw a Zoom call over here, let's throw some e-learning over here. Everything is very structured and predictable for our sellers, because the more predictability comes with it, the easier it is for them to know it's coming and being expectant. But before that goes out to the end of the AEs, I actually send out a coaching guide to the manager to say, here's what this course is going to do. Here's how you coach
lesson
with
plan.
it. Yes, it's a lesson plan. It's like, here's how you can reinforce it. Because listen, like, I don't want you popping in a movie on your team meeting and thinking you're going to watch like ET every day. Like, we want to make sure that we're actually, teaching. And so, many first line managers think that all the learning, all the enablement comes from your enablement person or your team, and it's not. It's really a partnership. So we got to work together because teamwork makes the dream work, right?
That is fascinating. I mean, because this is one of the things that we talk about at Atrium a lot, is that like the enablement of the managers is something that is like not really done. So in our case, obviously, we think about like data-driven enablement, like making it such that managers can use data to manage their teams and metrics to manage your team or whatever. But even if you expand the scope there, like it's if you expect your enablement function to like essentially be being sales trainers with the reps, that's like very, very low leverage, right? Because like, you only have as many, sales enablement people as you have. Whereas, and this is actually something that Michelle Vazana talks about in her Crushing Quota book, around how like high performing managers are really kind of the difference between mediocre sales organizations and like really outperforming sales organizations. In fact, I talk about this in my data-driven coaching masterclass. But the problem is that like organizations don't enable the managers in a way to like teach the teacher, right? And like as you kind of just were saying, like, oh yeah, it's a lesson plan for the framework, and then I train them on it, and then they use it with their teams. Because like, Heap has, I don't know, like 60 sellers or like 80 sellers or whatever. Like there's not enough Robby or to go around there, right?
No, and we really need, and my batteries are going to die on this. I'm going to take it off in a second. But the thing that we really need there is we need the ability to not do the core teaching, because we can do that, because we do that through e-learning, through on-demand learning at scale, right? That we could do. It's the reinforcement, because the advocates are forgetting curve, that if you're familiar with that, right? If you don't constantly reinforce it, it gets forgotten or it gets put somewhere else. And that's what I really need, we really need our frontline managers to do, is like, hey, here's the theory, here's what Robby's babbling about. Let's go put it in practice into our daily life. Let's talk about a particular deal. Let's talk about a particular email. Let's talk about a particular interaction with a customer through listening to a call. That's where the magic happens. We'll give you the curriculum, we'll give you the content, we'll curate that, but like the actual application of the knowledge really needs to come back to the first line manager, and we'll help you with it, but we need scale.
But how do you, I think that's actually a really fascinating question, because like we have a bunch of junior managers here at Atrium as well. And so one of the things, like getting them off the field is actually really important. As you like, hey, you're not a super rep, get out of there. Like you're not closing deals for people. Like you are in the business of making people better, as opposed to being in the business of like, closing these deals yourself. How do you help these folks get more comfortable at like giving people feedback and coaching? Because one of the things that I observe with junior managers often is that they have the mindset of kind of like, well, I'm just like little old me, right? Like how could I possibly, I'm a 28-year-old AE manager or whatever, and I'm coaching these 25-year-old like mid-market reps or whatever. Like they kind of look like me, and we go out to the same bars in the marina. So like how do you install that backbone in them to be like, hey, I actually need to give you coaching here and feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their secret sauce in sales, right? So some people are really good at connecting with customers. Some people are really good at process. Some people are really good at understanding the product. Like some people might be all three, but whatever your secret sauce is, and this is actually what I'm doing next week with my team, is I'm going around to all my sellers, because we're small here at Sparrow. I'm asking them, what's your secret sauce? Like, what is the thing that you're really good at doing? And so if that's the area you're really good at doing, like, hey, for example, maybe you're really good on internal process. You can work a deal from in through, getting all the way up to CRO for approval, getting through legal, getting through. If that's your secret sauce, great. Let's focus. You don't need to focus on that. But if you're not really good at giving coaching feedback or being able to go through a deal review, that's the area we'll focus with you. So each time from an enablement function, you have to have either the ability yourself to do it, or lean on somebody within the organization to say, oh, your secret sauce is this. Can you come help me coach this person? It's a teamwork thing.
Which is like not super easy, is the problem, is like because essentially what we're talking about is like per rep, and I forget what this is called in education, but essentially it's like per student.
Differentiated instruction.
Yeah, there you go. I knew that there was going to be like, I knew there was going to be an amazing, like, some sort of special term for it. But like, that's the thing, is that the really effective way of doing this at a rep level, of course, is like recognizing kind of like where the hitch in their giddy up is, and then like focusing on just that, or like one or two things, obviously not like 6 things at once, like the world's worst golf coaches, right? Like do this with your arm, and like do this with your head, and like do this with your knee, and like all of a sudden like the person's like can't do anything. I find that like facilitating that like operating rhythm, actually the term we've been starting to use internally here is like the sales management motion, right? You got your sales motion, but then you got a sales management motion. And so like facilitating the ability to do differentiated instruction for these individuals, is challenging. How do you weave that into the sales management motion such that it actually happens, right? Rather than these like, what did you say, random acts of enablement?
And the max of enablement. So it's going back to, it's going back to your mom. If your mom's listening, I don't know if she'll listen to all your calls, she'll know this. The lesson plan is still the same, because the lesson plan is the container in which you drive. So the sales management motion is the container. Where you do your differentiation is within those containers. And so having that structure of, this is what I'm going to do with each one of my sellers. Now, in that meeting, in that discussion, or in that motion, that might be a little bit different for Pete than it is for Sean, which is different from everyone else, right? But I have that container. I know what the basics of that. So, like, for example, we were talking about this before the start of the call. Like, your one-on-one is not a catch-all for everything. You should be more structured about that. You should have, maybe on pipeline review calls, I'm doing a deal review. Maybe I'm doing deal reviews as a team, and I'm doing these other things. So, in my previous experience at Exactly, when Vista Equity purchased us, they came in and did a lot of training with us. They're like, hey, this is the way you should look at this. If you want to close the right deals, the right pace with the right velocity, these are some things you need to consider. And I learned a lot from Jessica Cash at Vista Equity. Well, shout out to Cash, because she taught me this. She said, hey, listen, if you're structured with your time, you're going to be able to, your sellers are going to be very predictable about, hey, when I come to deal pipeline reviews, I'm coming to this. But there's also this other thing that she taught me too, is that as a frontline manager, if you're out there listening, you're a frontline manager, it is okay to decline a meeting if your seller is not prepared. Your time is too valuable to sit there and watch your seller fumble. If they don't have the pipeline review done, if they have not done the deal review, cancel the meeting. Because you have better things to do with your time with other sellers who need your time as well, versus spending 15 minutes watching your seller try to fumble through something that they're not prepared for.
I was fussing around over here on the corner trying to find this page for everyone here. So on the topic of like the coaching motion, or like the coaching behavior in the sales management motion, my favorite book on that is 5 Secrets of the Sales Coach by Corey Bray and Hillman Sori. Absolutely love that one, because it talks about, I forget what the actual their little like coaching framework, it like stands for something, but I forget exactly what it is. But it's kind of like a similar concept, right? We're just like, hey, we got the thing that we're working on right here. We've got our evidence associated with it. I do this actually with my team. So like each of my reps, and I have like 13 now, which is like kind of
that's a little much.
Yeah, insane to kind of think about. Everyone has essentially our coaching dashboard, right? Like we have an Atrium coaching dashboard for each one, and it's only like 2 or 3 tiles, right? It's not like it's not like kitchen sink or whatever. And like this person right here, we're working on, so like we use Gong and Chorus because why not? Like this person right here, we're working on their monologue. Like we're working on their monologue and their and their patience, right? And so like we have 2 tiles there because actually Atrium integrates with Gong, and so like we're tracking that to make sure that like she's pushing it down, right? And then but that's different than this other rep over here, and like literally all of this, like this rep over here, he's got pipeline management pigpen going on. And so literally all it is just like one tile focused on like how many untouched like how many 30-day untouched ops you have right now, and like what that trend has looked like over time. And so like that's the evidence that we bring to those one-on-ones. We're like, hey, cool, how are we doing on our pipeline hygiene? And if it turns out like, oh, well, like we vanquished that beast, well, delightful. Then we move on to like whatever the next thing is, right? Like we remove those tiles, and then we kind of like add something else there in instead. I think one thing that you and I were talking about ahead of time was this idea of like, we're talking about coaching right now, right? But I think one thing that organizations don't do as good a job of as they should is actually like characterizing to managers, like what are the things you ought to be doing? Like we've talked about one thing, which is coaching, right? But like, what is the kind of like bundle, right? It's the inventory of behaviors that they should be doing. And so like when you think about the most successful sales managers, what are those like things that they ought to be making space on their calendar for?
Yeah, so I mean, besides coaching, because that's a big one for me,
that's a big one.
being able to see the high level, whether you're using a Gong or a Chorus or something. And I'll give a shout out to Emily Dresser / Carpenter. She was one of those managers at Heap that I used to work. She's great but the reason why she's great is she has structure. So not only is she a really good coach, but she's also doing space on her calendar to go through and be able to listen to calls and understand what's going on in the business, looking at the deal boards, using the tools that she has available to her to understand what her business looks like overall. Instead of flying from deal to deal to deal, she's using this, she's looking at a level up and going, okay, I can see all of this in one place. Where are my problem points? Let me go in and focus in on that. So that's the second one. And then the third point is always making sure that you have a good bench, whether that's internally with your BDRs, SDRs, or it's externally going out and recruiting. You always want to have that constant bench, especially where we are today in the market. And I know we've experienced a lot of layoffs and things are happening in tech, but the reality still remains that there are still a lot of sales jobs open at a lot of very, very good companies. And recruiters are very active right now. So we want to make sure that in case we miss something, we need to make sure that our employees are very happy. That's the fourth bucket, is making sure that people are still engaged, not just going through the motions. So I think it's kind of like four big things that they should be making space for: coaching, being able to understand their business, recruiting, and then employee morale.
Yeah, for sure. And then one of the things that we talk about a lot, which is like, what are the ways that you can weave data and metrics into that sales management motion, right? And so like, this is the like, usually what ends up happening is if you leave a sales manager, like especially a junior sales manager, to like their default, like probably what they're just going to do is like spend all their time doing, deal inspection, deals, right? Which is, that is important, but it is not the totality of what they ought to be doing. And so when we think about the things that we like, when we talk about data-driven sales management as a practice, we say that like, yeah, you should be having good coaching one-on-ones that are informed by data, like I was kind of talking about before, whether it's you have a dedicated dashboard to it, or alternatively you have like a profile page or whatever, that folks should be like really proactively bird dogging the monitor of their ramp of their new hires, and making sure that like, it's one thing to like go through onboarding like boot camp or whatever, and then it's like, all right, cool, like we'll see you in 6 months when hopefully you get to full productivity. Like obviously that's
if you're still here,
right? Yeah, exactly. Like that's nonsense. Like what we need to be doing is like bird dogging the precursor metrics as we go along. And I did a class on I actually recently did it's either with MSP or maybe it was Atrium, I can't remember, a master class on data-driven kind of like ramping success. And then I think the other kind of two big things that managers should be doing with data that is, that they could be doing more of, is like, one, like identifying the issues for a rep, like what that hitch is in their giddy up, right? And because it's different on a per rep basis. So like being able to like read the metrics in a way that allows you to be like, oh, okay, I see that this rep right here has an ASP problem, and the ASP problem is coming from, not putting enough like professional services on things, or like, or alternatively, like, dropping your pants on price at the finish line or whatever. And like this rep over here just has like, pipeline hygiene issues. And then the flip side of that is, and this is something that managers like usually don't do, is taking what makes your most successful reps successful and then spreading that throughout the rest of the team. Because usually what ends up happening is like managers are just like so busy that they're like, man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so like, I just like don't even pay attention to that person, because like they're hitting the ball out of the park. But that's like a big missed opportunity, because like if you could like take what they're doing and then like get the other 5 reps on the team to do that as well, like guess what, like now attainment just went up by like 20% across everyone, right?
Right. But here's the thing that where a lot of managers make a mistake about that too, is yeah, we don't have to give them any attention. This is my A player over here. But guess who is giving them attention? Recruiters from other companies.
That's a good point.
And so like, if you don't feel valued, if you're just like, hey, I mean, I know we're all coin operated in the sales ecosystem, we're all kind of coin operated. Yeah, I'm crushing it over here. But if I'm at enterprise mid-market, I can get a named account job somewhere else and make, 30% more, and my manager's not paying attention to me anymore, I don't feel that, I'm being valued. Where, this is also an opportunity where they used to have a saying in education that, those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach PE. That's not true in sales. I was a seller before, and it is, but this is a stretch assignment. So somebody who's crushing their quota and has a secret sauce, let them teach it to the rest of your team. Again, it just makes it all, it makes you scale as a manager as well.
Do a brown bag. Hey, I want you to put together a presentation on this. Like, hey, I want you to hey man, I want you to take I want you to take Atrium. I want you to put together a 5-slide presentation on how you are able to get your win rate out of pilot is is 50% higher than everybody else's. Let's go ahead and look at that from a metric standpoint. And then also, can you unpack what the behaviors are that you're doing in order to facilitate that? For sure. That makes a that makes a ton of sense. One of the things that we've been doing. Oh, go ahead, Robby.
Oh, and so the other thing, and there's a comment there I wanted to remark too, is it also is not always, top reps aren't always want to be managers. They think they do, and they get in that role, and the role sucks. The two hardest jobs in sales is frontline manager and SDR. And people, get away from being an individual or IC, and they get in this management role. Like, man, this is not what I really thought it was going to be. And it gives people an opportunity to see it before they buy it. But then, Sean put a thing in this, top reps are time poor oftentimes. They are, but again, this is where prioritization of the organization comes into play. If you look at any rep's calendar, if you plan, again, planning is important here because they are busy. They can find an hour. Sometimes they might have to, go to the driving range just a little bit earlier the next day. But the thing is that if we can't just drop it on them hey, tomorrow, can you do this presentation? That's bad leadership, right? No. It's hey, I'd love you to share this. When does this work for you? When can you find some time for this? Because it shows, respect for them as well versus, you just dropping extra work on them.
Yeah, some of the things that we do there for kind of rep development is going back to our sales management motion. We actually have a recurring hour on the calendar, 4 p.m. on Mondays. It's called Enablement Hour. It's essentially just make space. We talk about this. I'm like a broken record on many things, but we call it a calendar is destiny. And so if you're you don't have space on the calendar for the thing, whether it's a one-on-one or a deal strategy meeting or pipe review or what have you, probably not going to happen, right? And so we just have this open slot that's blocked on the AE's calendar because guess what, prospects are not showing up to a meeting at 4 p.m. on a Monday. Even if it books, it's a no-show, right? Same with Friday afternoons, right? And so what we do is we just throw things it's something will show up the prior week or week before or whatever, and it's oh yeah, we gotta refresh people on that. I'm it'll just go on the agenda. We have a Google Doc that that we just make sure that we're fleshing out there, and then we just record it. We invite chorus to the call, and it just gets recorded, and then people can come back to it after the fact. And so I think you can do that where someone's someone has a particular insight. It's hey, cool, can you be ready to talk about that for 15 minutes in Enablement Hour next week, right? And now you got a slot baked on that.
So there's two things that you're doing really well there, right? You're doing one thing, which is predictable enablement, right? So even though you're not, the topics change from week to week, they know that Monday at 4 o'clock is dedicated to learning. And learning is a revenue generating activity. So we all know that we're going to spend that hour getting better. The second thing I've been kind of tinkering with lately is I stopped recording my enablements. And here's why. We've gotten really, really comfortable with the gongs and the choruses in sales where we've turned off our active listening. And so we all realize, because we do any session, any internal meeting, what's the first question that's usually asked?
Is it recorded?
Is this going to be recorded? Because as soon as I hear that, boop, I can tune out and go to ESPN or Amazon or whatever, because I know if I miss something, I can go back and listen to it. And so we need to listen. We need to listen like nobody's recording. And I think that's a problem that we're experiencing in at least in enablement right now is if you are running a virtual session and you're asking people to record it, they're not paying attention. And let's be honest, how often do you go back and listen to a Zoom recording? It's painful. Like
No.
for the people that are here live, thank you for joining. People who are going to watch this on Zoom, they'll fast forward through a few of this and get through it, right? So we need to work on our listening skills again and get that back in and really be in the moment for that hour.
Yeah, I think your point about like also about recruiters kind of like chirping at chirping at your staff is an important one as well. So in addition to like that enablement hour, like the way that our like sales management motion is constructed, or our operating rhythm is like we got that enablement hour. We have an hour-long team meeting that's like SDR plus AE plus actually marketing. And it's getting a pretty big meeting on Mondays, and that's like information distribution. Got a 30-minute recurring weekly deal strategy that's like manager plus rep. That's like literally just focused on deals. It's not the one-on-one. It's deal strategy meeting, right? It's not the one-on-one. Then we got every other week the one-on-ones that are half hour, and that's focused on like coaching and kind of like, what do I need from you? What do you need from me? What are our improvement areas? Is something like bumming you out? All those sort of things. And then what we've started to do recently, as like now we're at the point where I have like tenured reps who have been around the block, and we're like lining them up to be managers in like 6 months or 12 months or whatever, what have you. And then we have like the cohort behind those folks who are maybe like we're teeing them up for like 12 months out, 18 months out, 24 months out. We've started like kind of having them do like go to some management classes. And we have a couple different like versions of that. So one is that actually with Atrium, we actually work with Richard Harris. We just have them do manager training for like all of our customers on a monthly basis. It's just like an open, it's not office hours because it's structured. It's like a management boot camp. It's like 4 hours long or whatever. So I've started sending some of our reps to that, which is good because we sell to sales managers and SDR managers and what have you, and they need to be able to talk manager with them. And then the other thing that we've been doing is like a really kind of like good professional development thing is sending folks to Matt Cameron's SaaS sales management thing, and that's more like 6 days. It's like I think it's like 2 hours in the morning across like it's like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on one week, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on another week. And like the reps really like it. And I think to your point about like try before you buy, that way they can kind of understand like, okay, actually, I don't know if I want to necessarily.
I'm going to make more money. I can make more money being an IC.
Yeah, like that's not for me necessarily, right? But at least and in our case, like we kind of cheat because one of the things that we joke about with our reps is that like our reps get amazing at data-driven sales management, which of course is only one slice of management, but like in their like 4th or 5th or 6th month as a AE at Atrium, they like know more about like management by metric than 40 something or like 50 something year old managers. And so it's really but what they need to know more about is like this operating rhythm and like what a sales management motion looks like. And then they actually kind of get a preview of it as well, which is kind of nice. What about SDR managers? How do you think about that? Because we were talking about like enabling junior AE managers get off the field, et cetera. It's like, a junior, like an SDR manager can't really like be in a prospecting deal with them.
Yeah, they're not.
What are the things they should be doing?
I mean, I think a lot of it's, for them, they're dealing with junior people, first job out of college, maybe transitioning roles, is a lot of getting into listening to calls, whether if you have a call recording tool like a Gong or Chorus, looking at those, using trackers, using things so that people understand the basics. So like whatever your sales methodology is, whether you're using like a winning by design or you're using the command message, whatever you're using, like helping those sellers really get good at the basics, because we want to use, I mean, at least at the roles I've been at, and you just talked about sending those people to management. The same thing happens with every role, right? We want to build these bridge programs from one role to the next, right? Because two things happen. One, they feel appreciative of anybody who's, hey, we're willing to spend this much money or time or energy to invest in you. And that makes me feel good, like, hey, these people actually care about me. But number two, from a productivity perspective, like we're getting more out of these people because they might be looking around. They're like, hey, the grass is greener over here. This might be this management. They might be offering me a management role. If we have these bridge programs built into place from like BDR, SDR to AE, AE to manager, manager to second manager, like we have these programs built, we're going to get another quarter out of people at full ramp because like That's the problem. So like Malwarebytes is a great
It's the
example.
it's the full ramp. It's like, yeah, it's like this, and then like keep going at that asymptote, right?
Right, because enablement's really expensive. If you think about, let's just play for a minute. The BDR role, we hire somebody out of college, we teach them all these great things. It takes them, 3 months to ramp to get to full quota to where they are. And then 6 months later, we're going to promote them to an AE role, which is a completely different role. And we're going to re-enable them again and spend all that money and then wait another 3 months.
We're not really amortizing our investment very well.
And so if we build these bridge programs out, we're going to get another, and you make them a quarter long, right? You make the program a cohort for a quarter. You're going to get a quarter of fully ramped productivity out of these people, one more than you may have not gotten. And secondly, you're showing them a path to their next step. And thirdly, they're going to swat away some of these recruiters. They're like, hey, wow, Atrium or Sparrow, they've got a plan for me. I'm not interested in taking an interview right now. Whereas if somebody, comes out of the blue on LinkedIn and says, hey, we've got a manager role, offer for you, and there's no career planning for you at this your current role, yeah, you're going to take the call and see what's up. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I think kind of related to that is like organizations that do a good job on like micro promotions. Can do this. It's actually something we've been thinking about recently as well, because we're at the stage where we need to, it's now starting to be like a factory, which is great, right? Like, and so what you want to make sure of is like that you're actually leveraging that and exploiting that. So you're like, SDR, you come in at SDR, and then you go to SDR2, and then you go to SDR3, and then like your senior SDR and what have you. And the way that we approach that is essentially just based on like opportunity creation. So, you get to 50 ops, you do this. You get to 200 ops, or sorry, 150 ops, you're here. You get to 300 ops, you're here, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't done as good a job of kind of like layering and other responsibilities. What have you? Have you seen that being done like successfully at the SDR, like these bridge programs, both for SDR and also for AE?
Yeah, I mean, so to get into our, we used to call it the associate AE program. To get in our associate AE program at Malwarebytes, you had to have criteria. So you had to make your quota twice consecutively in a quarter, or 2 quarters consecutively, or you had to hit fully ramped quota completely. So if you came in and just slayed, and you hit your annual quota, cool, we'll put you in. But we had some criteria around it. So I like what you're going with what you have there, because it gives people very clear objectives to hit. And sellers love clear objectives. Like, that's why, I mean, as much people love or hate quota, they know where the line is. And in a lot of other professions, they don't know where the line is. That's the best thing about sales, is you always know where your line is. And so I think we need to do that. And in enablement, what I do with my team, when I had a team, is when we always show where their next path was and what are the observable behaviors that we need to be able to see, so I can go in and put you in for that rank, that promotion. So if I'm moving somebody from a program manager to a senior program manager, and it's different, right? It's different because we don't have number-based objectives that we're working off of. We're working more off of productivity. I'm looking for my observable behaviors of like, hey, when I see you can do these 4 things and we both agree that you've got this mastered, that's when I'm going to go in and put you in for that promotion. So I think there's some opportunities. It's not just like tenure. It's all, it could be a part of it could be quota, part of it could be about their teamwork, part of it, but you just need to think about like, hey, if I want to make an AE2 role, what does that look like? What are some of the things that are there? And then kind of building that criteria and then communicating that out, so people have a clear path of what their career looks like in your sales organization.
Yeah, totally. We so one of the, as we've gotten bigger, I've had to like it's like that is like tied to like awards and recognition also. So we've gotten a lot more proactive around doing like awards and recognition stuff, again, like micro. So when so Atrium's mascot is a fox. His name is Kit. And the reason why is because obviously Atrium makes sales managers smart, and foxes are smart, right? And so like pretty much everything we have is like fox based. And so what we have is we have these like little desk flare things that are these little fox statues. And essentially what you do is you just like rack them up. So like, for the SDR thing, get to 50 ops, because our SDRs will do like, they'll do like 20 ops, 20 to 25 ops a month. So like, it's like 50 ops, 150, et cetera. And the same is true with account executives as well. It's like, your first 100K of ARR, when you hit 250, when you hit 500, and then that way what you can get is like people just have them kind of like stacked up on their desk, and people kind of, people can see the when you walk by the desk, et cetera, et cetera. We have an office which is kind of related to this. I know, right? So people can have that. So I think that kind of like helps people like understand what the steps are there. But I think the observable behavior is a really good point as well. Kind of related to that though, because I'm talking about like what essentially is an enablement program, or awards and recognition program, and like development program that is has like a offline component to it. So like people see your desk flare or whatever. That becomes like harder in like a fully remote environment, right? And along with like so many things. What are some of the like the biggest things that you've learned over the last however long around doing remote enablement for AEs and those SDRs?
Yeah, so the enablement piece, I got lucky because I bought into e-learning very, very, very early in my career. So about 2010, I started building some e-learning for the first time, where most people didn't even know that. So by the time the pandemic hit, I was at Malwarebytes in 2020. We already had a library of 300 courses already built out in the 2 years I was there, because I built everything at scale. Because when you can't, first, there's a couple of things this is totally philosophy based, but Zoom-based enablements is a waste of money, because you can't measure.
Mean like live synchronous.
Like live synchronous. I'm going to drop, because they're poorly designed.
I'm going to talk at you.
I'm going to talk it. So here's what most people do. They set up 40 slides. They talk at their audience for 50 minutes. And at the last 10 minutes, they go, any questions?
Any questions? Yeah.
And so then, because this goes back to the instructional design, it's cognitive load. So their cognitive loads went, this is too much to file. I don't have a schema for it. I'm still just trying to figure out where this fits in my brain. And now you're asking me questions. And usually those last 10 minutes is some way off left field question that takes everybody off on a hard right turn, because that's the first question that came to mind. And so what we did was we built a lot of e-learning on demand. We did the learning paths, the predictable learning paths. We did them by role. So it wasn't just a one size fits all. We had one for BDRs. We had one for AEs. We had one for account managers. We had one for customer success. We had one for solutions consultants. Some of the courses overlapped, some of them don't. But we planned out in advance. So we knew when we launched our learning paths each month that each one of them were specialized for their role. We also gave context. So we didn't just assign it. I get on video every week, every month, do a video, same thing as I do with the managers. The managers get it in advance, and then I go back and do it with the individual contributors. Here's your learning path for this month. Here are your core courses. Here are the courses for the BDRs, AEs, AMs, CSMs. And I always come up with some sort of theme, because I'm corny like that. So each month I try to build some sort of theme, because sometimes the courses don't make sense together until you try to explain to them, like, here's why all these together make up a really good soup, because they're all going to help you accelerate your velocity of your deals, or this is going to help you be more tactical. You help you with your technical awareness of inside processes, whatever the case might be, because we're building these courses. So one is the courses. Number two is, if you have that inkling to do a synchronous learning, think about it this way. Think about the flipped classroom method, whereas I'm going to do a short little 15-minute video. Pete's going to talk about 15-minute video about building a great high velocity SaaS. He's going to do it for 15 minutes uninterrupted, just a quick little Zoom. I'm going to send that out.
Not 50, 15.
1-5. Nothing over 20 minutes, y'all. Anything over 20 minutes, you lost people, right? But I'm going to do a maybe 15 to 20 minute video of just walking this through. And then a week later, we're going to do a town hall. Come with all your questions. Let's geek out on it. Now, and Pete's going to be there to answer all those questions. Now, if Robby watches the video and he's like, I got it, I'm cool, I understand it, I don't have any more questions, go on, go with yourself. But what we do is we do these synchronous learnings by Zoom, because that's the easiest way to transfer information. And what happens,
we think it is, but it's a false economy, because it doesn't stick.
It doesn't stick, and it's really expensive. If you have like right now, there's 28 of us on this call right now. Let's just say, this is probably a $5,000 call.
Yeah, totally.
Now you and I are very entertaining, so they're getting their money's worth out of it.
Obviously.
Yeah,
but like you've got 50. I remember this when we were at Monster. It was so crazy. like we would do these training, because I was like a subject matter expert because my company got acquired by Monster, so I would have to
I'm sorry.
be like a be a presenter on something, and like literally like folks would get like flown in, and then like you're in the hotel conference room or whatever, and like nobody wants to be there because they've got their they got their deals that they're working on, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I think I'm having these memories. I'm like, cool, like synchronous Zoom is expensive. How about like synchronous, like flying people in to places? And so what you're saying is like micro chunk it. And then can you expand a little bit more on the, what did you call it, reverse classroom situation?
It's called flipped classroom. So essentially you do the homework first and then you come back and do the classwork. Whereas instead of doing the lecture first and then you do the homework, you do the homework first and then you come back and do the lecture, because you have context. So from a learning perspective, what it does is it builds a schema, and schema is just a little file in your brain. It's like, okay,
we're I get what Robbie's talking about, because I watched that video and I did a little bit of the exercises. So now I know where to store it, versus like real time constructing the schema as someone's like blathering at you.
Exactly. And then also, in sales, we want to, everything that we're bringing to you, we want you to apply it immediately, right? So if we're teaching you how to negotiate better, I want you to bring a deal. So now here you do, I've given you the concept, I've given you the construction of the context of it. Come with a deal. Let's talk about your deal. Let's not just talk about this in abstract. I've got Monster. Let's talk about this. Here's where this is stuck. What would you recommend that I do based off of what we learned? Because this really makes sense to me, but I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. So now I have what's ARCs. This is Keller, which is attention, being able to have that confidence and satisfaction that, hey, this is something that's going to help me. I'm bringing that into this conversation. And so now Pete's coming in with my deal, and now we can break his deal apart, and he's going to come away going, yeah, that was a good use of my time. Like, that's what I want people to walk away from anything in enablement, from a manager, from an AE, from an IC, is every time you walk away from an experience, you're like, hey, yeah, that was a good use of my time, and I'm going to go use that tomorrow. Talk about like the golf example you had a little bit earlier. Same thing with feedback, right? Like, we can't give ICs as managers, we can't give ICs 30 things to do. Pick one thing that they've done really well and one thing they need to improve, because then they can laser focus on that. And like you said with your coaching session, right? Somebody might be thinking of ASP, great. And for people who don't know, average sales price, because it's got to define terms, right? We'll work on that. And then when you get that mastered, let's go look at something else. And so Todd Capone taught me about that too. It's just one piece of feedback that's good, one area where they can improve. And just keep going with that cycle versus trying to give it all to them at once.
Todd's got a new book coming up. He was the keynote at the last Modern Sales Digital Summit. I forget the name of the new book. It's like Salespeople Ruin Everything, isn't that it? Or
that's his talk. It's a transparent sales manager. It's his new book.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, there you go. Well, we give away so many copies of the Transparency Sale. It's hilarious. And so like, we'll just give away a ton. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, we'll give away tons of copies of this too, because it's funny, because like I'm glad there's more management books coming out, because to date, there's always like the sales motion books, like, the Challenger Sale or Spin Selling or whatever. And to our kind of point earlier, like, but like managers are where the leverage is at, right? So like, so like at least now there's like more of that stuff coming out, like, John McMahon's Qualified Sales Leader is fantastic. It's like kind of more anecdote based, which is really nice. It's fun. It's good to read. Like, oh yeah, I'm sitting next to John McMahon, the father of MedPick, and like learning cool shit from him and what have you. 5 Secrets to the Sales Coach is really great. Obviously, we're huge fans of Jason Jordan's Cracking the Sales Management Code, which is like, peak nerd. And then like Michelle's Crushing Quota is kind of like the manager implementation of that. I'm excited to hear what to look at Todd's, because it sounds like it's a little bit like more human centric.
It is, and that's the other thing that's kind of interesting. Not to drop any names, but I used to work for Todd at Salesforce. That's how I got roped into Todd.
Really?
Yeah, he was my
before he was at like Power Reviews or Bazillions or whatever.
He was the head of he was the head of Enablement Exact Target when I first started there. The thing that Todd and I really align on very well is that it's not just about the numbers. The numbers get you where you need to go. And that's where, Atrium and Jason Jordan and all these things are really, really good because it helps you get to where you want to go. But like the people side of things is really where a lot of managers fall down. So like listening to Brene Brown and talking about vulnerability and accountability is really important. Going in and reading Seth Godin's Tribes, because there are all these opportunities for micro groups where people need to be led. These are all these like people call them soft skills, but these people skills, because that's what you're doing. You're not dealing with deals anymore. You're dealing with humans. And then if you're not good at dealing with humans, stay in IC. It's cool. Like you're gonna make a crap ton of money. You're gonna make more money than I will. So stay there, like make a lot of money and do what you do. But like, if you're really passionate about leading people, that's when you need to go into sales management, because that's where the aspiring and being a coach, being that person who's calling the play, not running the play.
Yeah. It's like that manager step is the thing that we frequently run into with Atrium, because like Atrium is super, super focused on saying like, hey, look, we know that you're not from the finance department necessarily, Mr. Sales Manager, Ms. Sales Manager, Ms. SDR Manager. What we're going to do is make it super, like we're going to abstract away all that annoyance and complexity and just make it super, super easy for you to like understand what's going on with your team and understand what's going on with your reps from a metric standpoint, such that you can change their behavior. But the thing is that like that's that last step. It's like the last mile of delivery there. Can be a challenge if people aren't enabled. And like our customer success team is lined up around like helping people get better utility out of like the data and metrics and what have you. But we haven't gotten to the point of like helping people like coach better or whatever. And like maybe that's something we do in the future with respect to the product or what have you. Right now, that's why we have things like Richard Harris doing a day-long thing. We're like, oh man, like it's really important for our customers to be able to coach with this data, because if they don't coach with this data, they're not going to get the impacts and what have you. And I think that so it sounds like we're going to be giving away a lot of copies of Todd's new book, is the upshot, I think.
And I've already bought him one wing of his boathouse from all the business I've given him. So, why not give him a little bit more? But, that's the thing too, is like, I know that I've been doing this for a while. And there's one point I really want to make, is that sales enablement is a practice. It's not a department. It's not a job. It's a practice, because it's constantly evolving and we're working through it. But if you're on this call today and you're like, hey, I don't have a Robby. I've got a very junior person that maybe has been who's an AE who got thrown in the role, or a manager who got thrown in the role. There's a couple of ways. It's called the transparency cell, Mark. The one way you can leverage a junior enablement person is they probably know your tools really, really well. They may not be able to connect the dots as well as like somebody like myself or Pete, but they can show you what is out there. And so like, for example, I've used Atrium before. I've used it as when I do one-on-one coaching with ICs. I pull up their profile page and that's what we use as our basis for our one-on-one. But if you have like Gong, or you have like a content management system, there's a lot of, or an outreach or a sales law, there's a lot of nuggets in there that's telling you where things hurt. You might not know they're there, but your enablement person probably knows that tool really, really well and can show you how it's used. And then it'll be up to you as the manager to be like, okay, I know where to find the data. I just need to be able to distill the data. And that's where you're going to have to, work with a junior enablement person to kind of do that. If you've got a senior person that's been doing this for a while, you should be leveraging them. Like, hey, let's walk through my team at Gong real quick, or let's walk through my team on this. I want to understand what their usage is, because there's a lot of great data that Atrium can pull up and show you that, but there's also some places where Atrium can't, that can help you clue in what's going on. Like, for example, if you have a content management system, you can go back and look at usage reports. Is your team actually looking for things? What are they looking for? What are they not leveraging? Because what that could tell you is, if you're like, hey, I'm looking at my team and I'm noticing that they're not pulling down the first sales interaction very often, that could be an indicator of they're using an old deck, which means they're using old positioning and old messaging because they're comfortable with it. So now I can go to Gong and go, okay, I'm going to go listen to Pete's calls, or I'm going to go look at Pete's slides and just see what he's using. And then I can have that conversation with my one-on-one, like, hey, I have an observable behavior. I'm observing you're not converting as well as the rest of the team is. And one of the symptoms I'm noticing is you're using old messaging and old decks. Let's talk about that. So there's a way to leverage your junior enablement people as well. They're a great resource out there. They're not just, and this is an interview question, Pete. Somebody, Ken, who's our VP of marketing at Sparrow, asked me this when I was doing my interview. He's like, I noticed you don't have training anywhere on your LinkedIn profile. And I was like, it's very deliberate. And I learned this from Roger Jefferson, who also wrote Sales Enablement 2.0. He was my old boss at Oracle. I've worked for some really cool people, by the way. And he said this, he taught me this very early in my career. He said, listen, humans are enabled, dogs are trained. So don't treat your enablement people like just trainers. They're not just a little guy with a clicker throwing treats at people. They are trying to enable people to do things on their own.
Oh my God, that is amazing. Cool. So Dan has a question here. Hopefully he's still here because he asked it like a hot second ago. But so Dan Russell has a really great question. I'm an SDR manager at a company moving 100 miles an hour, which is awesome. I think actually Dan works for my buddy Mike Cabot, who's absolutely
I know
fantastic.
Mike and I work together at Malwarebytes.
At Malware. Yeah. Mike is fantastic. So, when moving 100 miles an hour, it's easy to just lose sight of important habits, details that may not deliver immediate results, but could dramatically impact the bottom line. So how do we do that? And I think my recommendation to you, Dan, and I totally feel what you're talking about. And actually, literally, Robby and I were talking about this before the call about how, like, because you're the manager and you're getting pulled in every direction, it's hard. Like if you only focus on things that are urgent, like, and you guys may be familiar with like the Eisenhower matrix of like urgent versus not urgent, and then not important and important. The things that end up happening is you're going to focus on things that are urgent and important, which is good. But then what you may end up doing is like focusing on things that are like urgent, but like maybe not as important, which you shouldn't, of course. And then moreover, even if you're not doing that, the non-urgent but important things don't get done, like, which is the thing that you're talking about here, Dan, which is like the important things and habits and details that don't deliver immediate results. So those things need to be calendared, right? You need to make space for them. And that's what one of the things that I talk about is like the notion of like an intentionally designed operating rhythm, right? A sales management motion where you put like think about your calendar as kind of like, it's like your canvas, right? Yeah. And then like you're going to put in the different things like, oh, okay, cool. We have a stand up, right? Like you got an SDR team, Dan, like we got a 9 a.m. stand up, right? It's 15 minutes. Like we look at metrics from the prior day and like where we're at this week. Maybe a dashboard fires out at 8:30 a.m. to the SDR team email list and maybe the SDR Slack channel ahead of that stand up. So that's like 15 minutes every day. And then we got our team meeting on Monday. Then I got my one-on-ones in there. And then like kind of what we were talking about earlier. And then I got my enablement hour. And then we've got a place where we do like content workshopping or whatever, but like whatever it is, like you gotta like you plan it out, and then now what you've got is you like now you've made space for those things to actually happen. So that's an effective way of kind of approaching that. Robby, what do you have to add to that?
I mean, I think that the calendaring piece there too is really, really important, but also looking at where, when you're treating your calendar like a canvas, where can you get economies of scale? Where are the things that make sense to do one-on-ones with your people that are skill-based versus celebrating? Like if you're doing call reviews, like you're looking through like, Dan, if you're listening to like, hey, let's listen to a really good call this week. Everyone sends up one good call they've done. Everyone sends one bad call, and you listen to 3 of each, right? And so you guys can do that together. As a team. So you have to be efficient with your time. And I just want to see if I can pull this up before. And just think about those. So some of these activities we're doing as a team, some of them I'm doing individually, but the biggest takeaway I think is that we've got to think about is we can't just throw everything into a one-on-one and call it good. Like that's just it's not good. That doesn't work. And it just makes unhappy managers, unhappy sellers, and then they leave, both either voluntarily or they get released back to society.
I wonder if that's actually that could be like really interesting, like marketing campaign, which like death to the one-on-one. Which is like super provocative. You're like, what do you mean by that? It's just because it's just like this grab bag of like garbage, right? Like what does that mean? You're not actually describing the content of the meeting. You're describing the humans who are in it versus like, here is a meeting that is on deal strategy. Here's our recurring coaching one-on-one. Here is our blah, 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 blah.
Well, right? Yeah. And the thing is that we have to have it. And this is where Brene Brown comes into place, right? We have to have the tenacity to hold people accountable. If you tell people, hey, this is a pipeline meeting and you need to send this to me in advance because I can't help you if I don't have time to look at this in advance and give you thoughts on it. You're asking me for my real-time reaction. It's not going to probably be a good one.
Yeah, we're just pissing away that time.
Yeah, if you can't get me a pipeline, if I have a template like, hey, here, let's go through the pipeline, you can't prepare that, I cancel your meeting. Or I decline it because it's not a good use of my time as a manager. It's not a good use of your time as a seller, because what are we doing here? We're both bullshitting each other. Let's get out of that cycle. Like, own the fact, be accountable for it. I'm not ready. Then we can have a discussion about that, in our personal development time. But we need to be able to be okay with saying, hey, you're not doing what you're asked of. I can't give you my time.
I love it.
I'm looking for my framework thing that I really love. Oh, here it is. Can I share something really quickly?
Yeah, please.
So this is may or may not have borrowed from somewhere else, but looking at this, this is kind of like the structure that we recommended. 15 minutes for pipeline on weeks 1 and 3. Let's look at your territory plan once a month. Let's look at your forecast weeks 2 and 4. We're doing a deal review strategy as a team, for 90 minutes. If we have to do more for individual strategic deals, great. And then at least once a month, I'm doing a 60-minute development of just like, let's talk about you. And that's where, Pete talked about working on a particular area they're focused on. And maybe that might be more. But quarterly, I just want to talk about where you are, what are we doing next for you? But the idea here is that you want to close your enough opportunities at the right pace with a winning deal strategy and do it at scale. And I think that's where a lot of managers fail, is not being able to scale this.
I love it, man. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. This was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Robby. I told you that it would fly. It does.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, super fun. So next week we've got another fantastic guest in the form of Justin Dinelli, who is a longtime MongoDB sales leader. He's going to be joining. We're going to talking about like product-led growth, kind of like product-led sales, things like that. So it should be tons of fun. Robby, have a great weekend. Okay.
Thanks everyone for sticking around.